In part 2, we're diving deeper with our guest into what real connection looks like and how you can begin creating more peace, joy, and closeness in your relationships, even when life feels full and stressful. You'll learn how personal growth and healthy boundaries can reignite your marriage and your sense of self. Stay tuned. Welcome to Fulfillment Therapy. I'm Kendra Nielsen, wife, mom, and licensed therapist. Do you ever feel like you're doing everything right, but you're still exhausted and empty? Did you think life, marriage, and parenting would be simpler and more rewarding? Sometimes you just want to crawl back into bed and lose yourself in screen time and chocolate, rather than face that personal or family stress. You are not alone. This podcast helps you break free of the rat race and build a richer, more meaningful life, flourishing incrementally and realistically, improving your mental health and wellness, and living with deeper purpose beyond the mundane, no matter where you are in life's journey. I was just trying to think of some things that I've done with my husband that are more memorable. I think recently we did something out of the norm, mixing it up, because one of the things I value very much is novelty, something new and different, adventure. So we went and we took a ceramics class together, and it was so much fun. It was like 2 different date nights, but just laughing, being playful, just like you talked about, not doing the part where you're talking about the pain points, the problems, or the schedule, because, yeah, if you think about it, I think most relationships could say, probably make 95% of communication is one of those things, right? Mm-hmm. Hopefully not that much, but it seems to be that case that way sometimes.
Yeah, I like what you said, I like novelty. So people do both predictability and novelty. That's human nature, and how much can vary from person to person. But if you do too much predictable, it feels boring. If you do too much novelty, it feels unstable. And so we're trying to find that balance point. But there is all the research that bonding happens when you're doing something new together. You're experiencing it together, maybe something with some excitement, but just something new. So if you go into a ceramics class the first time, if you've never done it before, you're still creating that anxiety about what is this going to be about? Am I going to be any good at it? Am I going to look like a foolish person trying to mess with the clay? And so all those pieces are in play, just like it would be if you went, let's go ride the roller coaster. So you have some of that same bonding that comes with any novelty. I think that does fit into building up some connection together and bonding together over that. And if you're in that ceramics class, you're not having to have some deep conversation about what's important to you. You're just like, hey, how's it going for you? That's just an experience together. And that's where I think a lot of times people make the mistake of thinking, oh my gosh, Leah's telling me that I have to figure out a way of having a 3-hour conversation with my spouse about the deepest, darkest things. I'm like, don't. That's overwhelming. But can you do a few minutes? Can you talk about what's interesting to you, the book that has meaning to you, the movie that had an interesting message to it that intrigued you? That's a way of revealing those deeper parts of yourself without having to say, let's sit down. I want to tell you what's my innermost thoughts.
Absolutely. Can you tell us a little bit more about the pause button that you were mentioning before? I want to see how this ties into it.
The pause button marriage is when you're at that point and you're like, okay, we need to go do these other things. So pause on our relationship. We'll come back to it. And because of that, I created the Unpause app as a way of helping people understand how to back out of that. And we create habits of connection when we're getting together. You hit the pause button, you start creating habits of disconnection. And so part of what we're doing is trying to change the habits of ways that people relate. So it's got education in it so people understand the process. Again, they need a roadmap. So we provide a roadmap, exercises to walk them through. What I like about it, and the reason we did it as an app, is because an app will send you a reminder. And that's helpful when you have a system reminding you to do some pieces as opposed to just going, oh, I'll get to that. Most of the time, if you're just, I'll get to that, it won't happen because we forget things that are outside of our habits. Habits run our day. Systems run those habits. So we're trying to create a system that helps people re-engage It's great if both people are using the app, but everything I do, I create that even if one person is using that, there's stuff to be gained. So we have, if you're doing it solo, here's how you do this.
That's really powerful. I'm glad that you're doing something like that. And I'm curious then how that ties in, because you said you don't need both people to be on board. Like one of them can be enough to really restore the marriage in some degree. Can you tell me a little bit more about that? And do you find that it's effective if one person is only ever really on board?
One person cannot complete the reconnection, but one person can start the reconnection. And I've had people say, oh, so you're just saying that I can carry the whole weight of this by yourself. There's no way one person can carry the whole weight of a relationship. They can start the process, though, of bringing it back online. And one of that creates some agency for that person to go, okay, I do have some more control. I have to wait. I wish I had $1 for every time somebody said, oh, it takes two to tango. And my response is always the same. You're correct, and you're already doing the dance. It's just the way the dance is going right now is not good. So I'm not asking you to start the dance. I'm asking you to think about how you can change the steps that you're dancing. How can you bring that back to some closeness? And so one person can start that by working actually 3 layers that I put in that process. One is to connect. So we've talked about those 3 targets. Now we've got 3 targets. And how do you connect? By being invitational. That's the connect. The other C is change, and that is to change yourself. And this is not where I'm saying there's something wrong with somebody. I don't know them, but I do know that we grow stagnant in adulthood. That is just human nature, unless we keep growing. And so this is to change yourself may mean that you need to take up hobbies that bring some energy into it because you've grown stagnant, or try new things. Or maybe it is a place where you need some growth, some coaching, some therapy, something that will help you move past the block. So change is the second one, so that you can be your best self. And that's important because of the other C, which is to create a new path. I believe that marriage is an opportunity, not just opportunity, but a necessity to move from being a you and me to being a we. So whenever I'm writing, it's capital W, capital E, like this is what a strong marriage is. That doesn't mean you lose yourself to that, because we just are talking about if you're changing yourself so you show up better, you're showing up as the best person you can be for that team. So the we is the team going, we are in this together. We're a team. It's interestingly, legally speaking, that's how a marriage is seen. There is another entity that's been created when you sign that marriage license that the state says that's a separate entity from the two of you. There's this third entity. I play pickleball these days, and I play doubles. And so when I step out, I'm looking at my partner going, where do I need to shore up how we're going to play? And I'm hoping my partner does the same. How are we going to play the best? Because we're here to win. I'm not here to criticize their forehand, their backhand, or anything else. I'm there to support what they're doing. And if they miss a shot, to go, that's okay. Let's keep at it. That's what I see as we are in this win the game of life together. How do we get through this the best way we can by supporting each other and being our best selves, as opposed to going, if you're not, I'm not. Never on the pickleball court even if the person's like, they're not playing as well, have I went, okay, I'm going to let this go. I'm just going to see if I can step up and play the best game I can in that. And I think it's the same in a marriage. There are times when one or the other is going to be less energy, maybe sick, maybe stuck in their own stuff. It's not carry the load, but can you step up into that piece while they find some energy? Because chances are there's going to be another time when you switch places. And sitting here, my parents are in their mid 80s. I can look back and see the times when one's been sick and the other's had to carry more, and vice versa. And that's just the rhythm of life, that not every day am I going to be 100%, but can I cover what I can for us to keep playing this game?
Yeah. Great things that you've said there. I agree wholeheartedly with some of the things that you're talking about. Like, I love how you talked about the chaser spacer. In visualizing that, I talk about those things a lot with my clients, but how we can re-engage, how we can reconnect. And when you mentioned the you and me versus the we, I'm just thinking of things clients have said to me. They're like, I don't even know how to do that because there's so much conflict when we try to collaborate, when we try to work together, there's just so much built up resentment at this point that it's much more effective when we do a little bit more of a you and me instead of just fighting. What would you say to them?
So they're actually describing you versus me. And I believe if you don't step into being a we, the you and me that comes into a marriage will become you versus me, just because there are now two opinions and you're not seeing it as how do we work on this together as much as, oh, that we have opposite opinions. If there are only 2 points, those points are always opposite. And so I'm often caught on how much of our literature, popular literature on relationships looks at the opposite, like a spender saver. And I'm like, it's because you only have 2. So those points are always going to feel like opposites unless you're going, how do we bring that together? I have a rule of thumb that conflict is unavoidable, but can you make conflict serve the relationship versus winning? So now let's take money as an example, because it's a very common struggle point. Money is either a place where we reflect our view of it's ours, our resource, or we go to yours versus mine. And the psychology of money, people talk about the mental accounting, where we make divisions in our mind that don't exist in real life. And by the way, this has nothing to do with how people set up accounts. There are plenty of people who do account setups because of asset protection or whatever else. But the mentality behind that, like, this is our resource. So there's our resource coming into our house, and there are needs for those resources to go out of our house. That's it. So to think of money as any other way, like yours versus mine, what do I get? What are you getting? Who gets to make the choice on how we spend it, is defining it as your resource or my resource versus it's our resource to decide together, to think about. And even in a mentality, right? So that create a new path is creating that new path to thinking of it as we. Years ago, research came out that couples who use plural pronouns, we, us, our, more often have happier marriages. And they were trying to, does that mean if you use those more, that happens? And my response was, only if it's reflecting how you believe, right? If you use those pronouns, you're probably thinking in more joint ways, collective ways. If you're using yours, mine, that also shows that you're not at that point, that you're not thinking of it as ours. And your thing of where they said it's better if we just divide and conquer. So I was like, where did that come from? And the idea for a military to divide the enemy, not divide themselves to take on the enemy, but to divide the enemy, is what it meant. And so here we are in how we carry that out of, I'll have this realm and you'll have this realm, and we have divided ourselves and made them as separate areas. And that generally ends up with resentments, that now I'm excluded from these other areas. Now you're doing things differently than I would want to, instead of how do we want to carry that out?
Yeah, a lot of really good points on how we can change that you versus me to something more connected. And I love how you talked about how can that serve the relationship. It's such a hard shift to make, and I think it does often take a coach or a third party to help us see different ways to do that. So it's, the other person is not the bad guy, but it's how can we collaborate more, even though that can be so alien for so many couples, especially if those resentments have built for so long. It just feels like impossible. I know a lot of my clients talk about that, like, how can we possibly see through this? But again, I like how you go back to that. Don't do it so fast. Do it in small ways, like playful ways, simple ways, building up those 3 things, like physical, emotional, spiritual. Do you have just briefly a couple ideas for each one of those that are successful with your client?
I always use the measuring stick of a little bit more than what you're doing. So if people are pretty much disconnected physically, can you figure out what's safe? For some, it's just when they're walking by to pat them on the shoulder. That might be all they can do. Or when they're talking to them, pat their arm. That may be all. If there's more there, if there's already, that's okay. And a lot of people will like, we're at a side hug. Okay, you might try, full hug and see if that will work. And part of that is just saying, where are we? What would ramp that up a little bit? If you're sitting on opposite ends of the couch every night, It's possible you reach over and say, hey, let me rub your feet, or sit a little closer, or hold hands, reach over and pat. Those are all ways of kind of testing. That is often when I've talked with people, they're like, oh, that's the only place we do connect physically. And I'm like, what do you mean by that? And generally they're like, we still have sex. Okay, that's a piece, but that can often feel like that was just need. Can you do what feels like want? Like, I want to pat your arm. I want to be in contact with you. And so a little bit more of that. Emotional connection. One of the biggest ones I see is this device or a device in the way of people talking. And so when somebody is talking, to put it down and actually turn and attend to them, that's an easy low bar. And to ask further. One of the things I watch many times is people will do the how was your day, and they get a report, the rundown. And the next question could be, what was your favorite part of that? Or what was the tough part of that? To go for an actual emotional part, how was your day is not what did you do, and yet we allow that to be the standard. So that's reporting, and it's more helpful if you go, okay, can we do rapporting? Can we build some rapport here in this conversation? Can I ask something about a little deeper than what was your day? And to be able to attend to it. So spiritual sometimes is starting with, hey, I read this really cool book that was talking about this. And not, what do you think about that? But let me tell you how I feel about that. Or to watch a show, hey, I heard this really good thing about this show that might have some deeper content that you can say, that was really thoughtful for me. I was thinking about this, which is different than saying, tell me your deepest secrets. That's the one that often you have to start with. What are the deeper pieces for me? What's important to me right now?
So almost like this, more vulnerability from you, and you're starting it.
Yeah.
Beautiful. My last question I have for you, I know we're limited on time, but I love to ask guests, is there a way recently, let's say in the last 6 months, that you've deepened your own fulfillment? That might be relationally, that might be otherwise, but any thoughts on that?
That's been my focus, my career. I had a health crisis in my mid-30s, and the doctors didn't think I would come out of that eventually. And so I did. And my belief was that I, from then on, was on bonus time. And so I never think much differently than what is fulfilling and meaningful for me. Lately, it's been spending more time with some authors who are struggling with what to do with their book, because I believe in the importance of messages being in the world. But a lot of my fulfillment comes from the fact that I get day after day, I get to work with couples who are trying to better their relationship. And in terms of that, being able to get, for instance, the Unpause app out has been very fulfilling, because I hear from more people who are like, yep, that made a difference for me finally.
That's beautiful. So if people want to learn more about this, where do they find it? Where can they find you?
Yeah, so unpauseyourmarriage.com. I usually try to be pretty direct on when I'm talking about unpauseyourmarriage.com is where the app is. And that's a good place to get started. If you're at the place where you go, oh, we have been on pause and we're just chronically at that point, unpauseyourmarriage.com. To find me, and if your marriage is in trouble, that's savethemarriage.com. If a marriage is in crisis, that's the place to get some intervention. Unpauseyourmarriage.com is if you're like, man, we might be having to save our marriage if we don't reconnect at this point. This is where we're headed. So both those resources are great places to be, depending on whether you're just at the pause point and it's hurting, or you're past the hurt all the way to the danger.
I really appreciate that. We'll put that in the show notes. And I love the things that you broke down. I'm just going to hit a few of those points. Just the core problem is, are you growing and expanding, or are you shrinking and dying? Like really taking an honest look at that disconnection versus connection, and not trying too fast. Really looking at those symptoms. Are they something that comes from that disconnection? Are you feeling lonely? Are you being more vulnerable? And then looking at those levels of connection, that physical, that emotional, that spiritual, like the examples that you gave. Are you spending too much time talking about those painful points or the calendar instead of really trying to deepen that connection? Are you willing to change yourself and move more from you versus me to more of a we? And look at it even in a different way, like shifting that mindset. Can this conflict serve our relationship, or tips that you mentioned. Like so many beautiful things that I think would really resonate with our listeners today. So I very much appreciate you coming on and sharing this with us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
We hope this conversation encouraged you to take small, meaningful steps towards a more connected and fulfilled life. Don't forget to check out our upcoming courses, Find Your Focus, and Launch Your Podcast, among many others, if you're ready to share your gifts and build something meaningful alongside your family. You can learn more at fulfillmenttherapy.org or email us anytime at hello@fulfillmenttherapy.org if you'd love to hear more on a certain topic or even be featured in a future coaching episode. We'll see you back here every Monday with a new episode. Until then. Hey friends, if you enjoyed this episode, a quick 30-second share can help someone else find support and help this podcast grow. Leaving a review on Apple Podcasts boosts visibility and keeps the show alive. Your simple acts make a big difference. I'll see you back here each week for more life-changing episodes.